The age of meeting ourselves again. Maybe all of the extremes that we're seeing are us informing ourselves of the choices we've made that are no longer sustainable. Maybe. The question is, when we look at all of the things happening in our lives today, are we looking at a time of destruction, as many people would lead us to believe, or are we looking at a time of transformation, as our ancestors and the indigenous people would lead us to believe? The question that we now have to ask ourselves. Everyone's saying we've got to act. Have you noticed everybody's telling us you got to do something, you got to do something. How are we supposed to know what to do? We must act, but how? How can we possibly make the choices and the decisions that we're being asked to make today until we answer one of the most fundamental questions of our lives? And that's what I want to talk to you about right now. That question is this. What if I said to you that the way you answer one question holds the key for every decision you've ever made in your life? Or what if I say to you the way you answer one question, it's the basis for every choice that you have ever made in the past or that you will make from this time forward? Or if I say to you the way you answer one question is at the heart of every challenge that is crossing your path now or any time in the past? If I said that, would you want to know what that question is? I'm going to begin with this quote. It's from E.O. Wilson, the evolutionary biologist. What he said is this. He said, "We're drowning in information, but we're starving for wisdom." Now, he could have stopped right there, and it's a very cool quote. He could have stopped, and it's very cool, but he goes on. He said, "The world has changed." He said, "From now on, the world will be run by what he calls synthesizers. Those are people who are able to put together the right information at just the right time and think critically about it and make important choices wisely." That's where you and I are today. It's not enough. It's not enough to know a lot about only one thing. We've got to figure out how our lives and how this world is working because we are seeing so many changes in this world. So why I put this program together, what I hope to accomplish today is I want to share with you what it is that makes our time in history so very different. Your parents didn't live a time like we're living now. Their parents didn't live a time like we're living now. No one in recorded human history has had to deal with what we're now calling the extremes of our time, the way we are right now. There is a new normal that's emerging in our world. And this is important because many people are waiting for the world to settle down, for things to get back to the old normal. And they put their lives on hold waiting for that to happen. That world is gone. It cannot come back. There's a new normal that's emerging, and we're learning to embrace that normal. I want to talk about the false science and the new discoveries that tell us the old science is false, that help us to make sense of the world. And I want to talk to you about resilience. And I know we hear a lot about different kinds of resilience. There is a new form of resilience that's emerging, very, very different from what we've heard about in the past. And that's what I'd like to accomplish today. Now, when I look at the world, I see the world changing. We were just in Europe a couple of weeks ago, and you know, it's changing everywhere. It's not just the United States. We move beyond the bubble of our media and the safety of what we've been led to believe is the truth of the world. We move beyond that. There's a whole big world out there, and that whole world is going through the change. Everybody's experiencing it. My question is this. We're being asked to make some big choices in our lives. How can we possibly deal with the change if we're not honest about the change itself? How can we deal? How can we make the choices that we're being asked to make if we're not even honest about what it is that's going on? So I'm going to start with some facts. It is a fact that you and I are living a time of extremes. Now, it doesn't mean that they're bad things. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily good things. It means they're big things. Do you feel that? You feel all the big things happening in the world? It's like all the fluffy little lessons are gone. We're dealing with big stuff in our personal lives, big stuff in our global lives. The world is changing faster than we've been prepared to accept. And the changes, many of them are here to stay. They're not going to go away, but no one is teaching us how to deal with those new changes. Our lives are changing faster than we've been prepared for in ways that we're not used to. Do you all feel that? You feel how quickly your life, how many in this room right now are making big life choices this weekend? Jobs, careers, relationships. Don't tell that to the person next to you. But you know what I mean, okay. Our lives are changing faster than we've been prepared to deal with. It is a fact that we must now think and live differently than we have ever thought or lived in the past. In some ways, the world seems to me like the Matrix. And maybe it's not so much different from the Matrix, but there is a fact that I want to say today. The big problems in this world, we're probably not going to change the big problems of the world from this room right now, realistically. But realistically, we can change our lives in this room right now. It can happen right now. I think it's important to be honest about those things. Resilience is the key to transformation in our personal lives, in our collective lives. Resilience. What does resilience mean? The old definition, when we used to talk about resilience, people used to think of it as the ability to return to a healthy functioning after something has happened, after a stressful situation, the ability to bounce back. We hear about that with Hurricane Sandy, for example, or some of the big earth changes that has happened. That's the old idea of resilience. And while it has served us, and it works in some instances, there's a new resilience that's emerging. It's the ability to think and live every day in a way that allows for us to thrive in the changing conditions. That's different than bouncing back. Can you feel the difference? The ability to think and live every day in a way that allows us to thrive in the new normal that's here now, rather than looking at the world of the past and waiting for it to come back. It makes sense. I'm going to say this to you right now. It makes tremendous sense to adapt to the changes that you're seeing in the world right now, because many of them are here to stay. It makes sense to adapt to the new normal. It makes sense to adapt to the climate extremes. There are very good scientific reasons showing us why we will not be able to shift those climate extremes in this lifetime. So rather than acting surprised every time we see the extremes, it makes sense to adapt to what we're living right now. It makes sense to adapt to a volatile economy. You've got people from this stage this weekend that are telling you how to do that. It makes sense to adapt to a volatile job market. It just makes sense to do those things. The good news is there is a better world, and it's already here. The better world already exists, but we've got to make room for it in our lives. I want to say something to you, and a lot of people are surprised when I say this. The big problems in the world are already solved. We already have the solutions. There's no shortage of solutions. In longer programs, I could go through all of these documents, all these books, and I could tell you about all of the discoveries that they've made and what they tell us. But what I want to say to you right now, there's no shortage of food in this world, for example. We have enough food right now to feed every mouth on this planet. There is no reason under God's green earth why any one of our brothers and sisters should be going hungry tonight. It's happening not because of the food, it's because of the thinking. We already have the energy solutions. We know how to create energy without making pollution or reducing or releasing greenhouse gases. We already have that technology. Every human on the planet that wants energy in their home or their business, that energy is available. It's the thinking that's not allowing those solutions into our lives. So there's no shortage of the solutions, and so you ask me, well, if there's no shortage of the solutions, where are they? Where are those solutions today? And that leads to what I believe is the greatest crises that we're facing. It's a crisis very few people are talking about. The greatest crisis of all, it's a crisis in thinking. It's the thinking that has yet to make room for this new normal in our lives. A crisis in thinking. The world of the past is gone. And I'm just going to say it to you flat out. There's no media special, no CNN special. I wish there was, or a BBC special. Flash, the world that we grew up with and the world that we have known and become accustomed to, that world no longer exists. And here's what I mean by that. We no longer live in a world of isolated countries, isolated economies, isolated technology. That world doesn't exist anymore. We don't live in a world of isolated energy or defense or communications. And because those things changed, it means your life changed. The big things in your life, the way you relate to money is changing, but no one has told you that. Unless you're in this room and these programs or some really forward-thinking Hay House authors, very few people are looking at these things in this way. The way we think about jobs and careers is changing. The way we think about religion and spirituality is changing. Medicine, health, security, all those things changed, and no one has told us in a big way in mainstream media. Here's the consequence of that. Because it has not been recognized in a big way, we've never had the opportunity to mourn the passing of a way of life, a way of living, and a way of thinking, so that we can let it go and embrace the new world that's emerging. We've got to let those old ideas go. I just realized I'm very close to the edge of this stage. There's no guardrails, and I get really excited. I know you can tell. So if I get really excited, you have to catch me on the way down, or just like get out of the way and let me take my chance. And I'm going to apologize right now, my front row, for my P's and my S's. You guys are really close. I know what's happening. You all on the video, you don't have to worry about it. Thank you. I love you anyway, too. Even after I spray on you, you love me? Wow. The world of the past is gone. Let me give you just an example, a quick example. My wife and I live in a rural community in northern New Mexico. We were driving up through the Sangre de Cristo mountains just a few months ago, and we stopped at a convenience store for gasoline, and I went in to pay the cashier, and I asked her, I said, how's the economy in this part of the world? She was counting money at the register. She said, do you really want to know? And I said, yeah, I wouldn't have asked if I didn't want to know. She said, it's hell when the mines close. Mines, M-I-N-E-S. There is a mine just above the town, and they mine an ore that is used to harden steel. It's called molybdenum, or moly. Some of you know the mineral moly. She said, when the mines are open, life is good. Everybody's got secure jobs. They're making good money. She said, when the mines close, it's hell. And I said, well, how many people work in the mine? She says, over 600 people. It's the largest employer in the county. I said, how many people are in the town? She says, 1,800. So a third of the town is working in these mines. I said, well, what's everybody doing now? She says, well, they're biding their time, waiting for the mines to reopen, for the world to get back to normal. I said, what are they doing? She says, whatever they can. They bale hay, they chop wood for their neighbors, they work on their neighbor's car, they help them with the house, the roof, or whatever. I said, how long the mine's been closed? She said, 9 years. I said, 9 years? 9 years. Now think about this. People, and she told me this, she said, people are waiting for things to get back to normal so they can resume their lives. They put their lives on hold. They are holding off getting married. They're holding off having families. They're holding off sending their kids to school or building new homes, waiting for the world to get back to normal. And I couldn't help but think, when I left that convenience store, I just witnessed a microcosm in that place of what we're seeing in the world. Many people are waiting for the world to get back to normal. They're clinging to an idea of a world that used to be 5 years ago or 10 years ago before they resume all the things that their hopes, their dreams, things that they've been trained to do. They've lost jobs. They're waiting for those jobs to come back. That world is gone. And for many people, they're putting their lives on hold. It's their life. I mean, they certainly can do whatever they'd like to do with their lives, but those are the ones that are struggling, and maybe you've noticed this. The ones that are struggling are the ones that are waiting for things to get back to normal. That's not resilience in the new expanded form of resilience that we're talking about. We live in a world that is so connected now. We call it globalization. And what it means is you can no longer separate what's happening out there from the world in your own living room. I know people that try to do it all the time. They say, I moved to this little town because I don't want to deal with the world. Well, I've got news for them. They're still dealing with the world in the price they pay for their groceries every day, the price they pay for the gas, price they pay for electricity. We share everything. in our globalized world. We share culture all over the world. You can't go anywhere in the world and not find a McDonald's. I was just in the main plaza in Cusco, Peru, the Incan capital, in July of this year, and they just opened a new McDonald's on the plaza in Cusco, Peru. In Lhasa, Tibet, there's a new McDonald's. They don't have any beef, so they use yak. And so now you have to order a big yak and have a big yak attack. It's a true story, honest to God. Tibetan monks love to talk about it. They have a big yak attack, so they have to go for it. Starbucks, we see Starbucks all over the world. Information we share all over the world. What it means is that we share the problems of the world as well, whether we're talking about peak debt or peak oil or social unrest or climate change, all those things, we can no longer separate the big stuff in the world out there from what's happening in our homes, in our living rooms, in our lives. We can no longer separate climate change of the world from what's happening in our own backyard. And I'll tell you what, if you live in Colorado or northern New Mexico last week, you know all about this. That's exactly what's happening. We can no longer separate what's happening with the energy industry in the world from the price we pay for our food. Think about it. When we grow food on corporate farms, it takes oil to pump the water, oil to fuel the machinery that harvests the food, that cleans the food, that packs it up, that ships it. If you've never seen this before, I want you to see that this is a UN chart. The red is the price of oil, the blue is the price of food, and I want you to see the relationship. When the price of oil and energy goes up, the price we pay for food has to go up. So we're all affected by the big stuff happening in the world, the economies of the world. You can no longer separate one economy from the other. I love this image. They're like cogs in a wheel, all tightly connected. You can no longer separate spirituality and your beliefs from what's happening in the world. Someone asked me in the lobby on the way over here today, Gregg, are you going to talk about science? Their eyes glazed over. You're going to talk about spirituality, and they got all excited. I said, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? Science, spirituality, the real world. The moment you draw that line is where you lock yourself into the thinking that keeps everything separate. In the past, if you're in this room, you've probably done a lot of self-help soul searching for your entire lives. And you've probably learned a lot about yourself and other people and the way things work. I don't know about you, if we were ever going to apply what we learned in the real world, now's like a really good time to do it. You think so? I can't think of a better time. Because we can no longer separate our spiritual world from what science tells us about the world from the way we live in our everyday lives. Our ancestors, the indigenous people of our past, the fact that we're going through so much change is no surprise to them. They knew it, they saw it coming. They gave us a heads up for about 5,000 years. They said, get ready. And I won't say nobody, very few people believed them. The Western world discounted this. I love this picture. See the beautiful man in the center? He's a shaman in the Andes Mountains of Peru that we work with. He's standing on his tiptoes. And I love this picture because when I go to Peru, I just tower over the tops of all the Peruvians there. They call me Papa. He comes from a tradition called the Quero. Beautiful, beautiful people, ancient, powerful wisdom. And the Quero talk about our time of change in a way that to me is fascinating. They even give our time in history a name. They say that we're living a time that they call Pachacuti. Pachacuti. Pacha is the Quero word for cycle. Kuti is the Quero word for the turning. We're living the turning of a cycle. Now, nobody told me that when I was in school, and I was trained as a scientist. Nobody taught me that. But when we move into the indigenous traditions, it's almost a universal wisdom. They know about the Pachacuti. What they say is the last little piece of Pachacuti is 22 years long. It began August 1st of 1990, 22 years long. When does it end? You tell me, anybody? Oh, you guys are good. I was just with an audience. They pulled out calculators, and they were saying, okay, August 1st, 1990, 22 years. Look at this. It ended on August 1st, 2012. That cycle is over. Where does that mean that we are now? It means now that we are already in the next age that they have talked about for so long. And if you've never seen this, you're going to love this. The name of this age, look at the name. It's the age of meeting ourselves again. The age of meeting ourselves again. Welcome, here we are again. That's my, while you're clapping, I'm going to take my jacket off. See, I thought you'd applaud longer so I could have more time to take my jacket off. Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Note to self, small miscalculation. They didn't applaud as long as I thought they would. The age of meeting ourselves again. Maybe all of the extremes that we're seeing are us informing ourselves of the choices we've made that are no longer sustainable. Maybe. The question is, when we look at all of the things happening in our lives today, are we looking at a time of destruction, as many people would lead us to believe, or are we looking at a time of transformation, as our ancestors and the indigenous people would lead us to believe? The question that we now have to ask ourselves, everyone's saying we've got to act. Have you noticed everybody's telling us, you got to do something, you got to do something. How are we supposed to know what to do? We must act, but how? How can we possibly make the choices and the decisions that we're being asked to make today until we answer one of the most fundamental questions of our lives? That's what I want to talk to you about right now. That question is this. What if I said to you that the way you answer one question holds the key for every decision you've ever made in your life? Or what if I say to you the way you answer one question, it's the basis for every choice that you have ever made in the past or that you will make from this time forward? Or if I say to you the way you answer one question is at the heart of every challenge that is crossing your path now or any time in the past? If I said that, would you want to know what that question is? Just say yes. If you say no, it's a really short program. So say, Gregg, what's the question? Oh, I'm glad that you asked. Thank you. The question is deceptively simple. So please, I'm going to invite you, please don't be deceived by the simplicity of this question. As individuals, collectively, we all must answer this question. The question is, who am I? Who am I? Or, there's a lot of us here, so the question becomes, who are we? Who are we? The way we answer this question is important because we solve life's problems through the way we think of ourselves. Now, I've spent the bulk of my adult life searching the world to answer this question for myself and to know how other people have answered it for themselves. And my journey has taken me to some of the most amazing places in the world. And this is probably the most difficult part of the program for me because I want to show you some images, and everyone's got a story, and I can't tell you all the stories. That's the hard part for me. I want to get really close to you. Can you tell? I want you all to come to my living room so I can share these stories. My journey has taken me into some of the most amazing monasteries remaining in the world today, and some of the most mystical temples in the jungles of the Yucatan. Some of you are with me this November in the Yucatan. You'll be right here where that picture was taken. My journey has taken me in these humble mud brick monasteries in the Egyptian desert like this one, where you would never imagine in a million years from the outside that this is what it looks like on the inside. And from this room, you would never imagine that you have to walk through rooms that contain all of the bones of all of the monks who have lived in the monastery for over 1,500 years to get to the library that holds the records of our past, this library right here. And it's in this library that's second only to the Vatican, we find the best preserved Christian and pre-Christian documents, artifacts, wood carvings of the crucifixion from people that saw the crucifixion, the illuminated manuscripts from people that describe what that meant to them, the paintings and the images from people that knew the man that was crucified. And from here, we have the opportunity to go to places like this, some of the most remote monasteries in the Himalayas, in Tibet, on the Tibetan plateau, places like this, where beautiful little monks like this one right here are really happy to share with us their history that's preserved in dark rooms that look just like that. Isn't that an amazing dark room? And when the lights came on in the room, there was a 1,500-year-old library in here as well. And it is in this library where we find the pages of the words that began before paper was created, from even older documents written on stone. The deepest truths that say, who are we? They answer the question, that have been now distributed from not only the Christian and the pre-Christian traditions and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Buddhist texts and the Nag Hammadi Library, the oldest versions of the New Testament, and the most ancient Bibles, but they're also with the people that live in this part of the world, the people remaining today. And I've spent time with these people. And this is where the human element really comes together. I've spent time with people in their homes when their loved ones were leaving this world in death, or when new life was coming into this world, when they were having their babies. I've been with these people in revolutions in their countries, and you get to know someone really well in those intense human experiences. The Sadhus in northern Nepal, the Bedouin in the Egyptian peninsula, the tantric masters. This man is covered with the ash from those who have been burned in the funeral pyres, and their ashes are scattered throughout the Ganges. We've spent time in the ceremonies that give meaning to these people's lives and what they do in their lives. We've spent time with all of these people, and the women that hold the feminine wisdom that's now reemerging. Look at this woman's eyes. This is a Hindu woman. In the Hindu traditions, you do not have to be dead to be a saint. So this woman is a living Hindu saint. I wish I could share with you everything that she shared with us. Look in the eyes of this Tibetan nomad. This woman told us that we're living the time of the change that her ancestors had prepared her for. And look at this beautiful Peruvian woman, right? I don't know about you. I'm ready for a female president in the United States of America. What do you think? Maybe this woman. Look, I would follow her anywhere in the world. Because women think differently than men. I know you probably know that already, right? I respect the men in the past, and they've led us down a path, and that path is changing. And I think women are less likely to use conflict and war as the first answer to solve a problem. And I think the world is ready for that right now. But we're all in this together. We're all learning. The men in this city are learning these lessons together. We're all part of the family that's looking at the past. And I'm going to invite you, if you can do this, when you look at the choices that have been made in the past, whether it's the past 5 years or the past 50 or the past 5,000, if we can view ourselves rather than from the perspective of mistakes. I'm not thinking about mistakes of the past. I'm thinking of a big learning curve where we've made decisions based on what we knew at the time, and now we know something new, and we can make new decisions and let that past go. I think that's what we have to do to move forward. I think that's what we've got to do. I want to tell you, I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing. I think you're witnessing a miracle in our world right now. In longer programs, I could talk more about it. But what I'm going to say is this. For 5,000 years, the civilization of this world had been engaged in one form of warfare or another. And I think you're witnessing a miracle that will happen in this generation. We are about to be the first generation in 5,000 years of human history that walks away from the use of war to solve our problems. And it's going to begin in the Middle East. I think you're seeing it. I'm encouraged by what I see publicly. I'm encouraged by what I see behind the scenes. I don't know where it's going to happen. Maybe it'll be Syria, maybe it'll be Israel and Iran, I don't know. But I sense it will happen in the Middle East. And the moment it does, it's the first domino that falls, and we begin to realize that war as we've known it in the past is obsolete. And we begin a new path, a new day. And I think you're going to see it sooner than later. So think back to this day when you see it happen. That's the feminine wisdom. For 5,000 years, our ancestors answered the question, who are we? They answered it in the way that made sense to them. It wasn't scientific, but it worked. Science is only about 300 years old, and for 300 years, science has tried to do the same thing. Now, I'm going to do this really quickly. This is the most technical thing I'll do in here all day. This is called the pyramid of thinking. It's an inverted hierarchical pyramid that has 6 great questions that every society, every civilization has to answer. My dear brother, friend, and colleague, Dr. Bruce Lipton, is in this room somewhere. He's right here. He came to see my program. Brother Bruce, I love you and I'm honored that you're here. Tomorrow afternoon, this evening, I think it's safe to say, Bruce, are you going to talk about some of those questions? Okay, he's going to talk about the love part of the questions. And I think that's a good thing to talk about. So I'm laying the foundation as one of the bookends, and Bruce is going to be the other bookend that follows up this afternoon. Thank you, Bruce. These 6 questions, everybody has to answer these for themselves, whether it's a religious organization or a society or a nation or a civilization. I'm just going to read them off quickly from the bottom up. The fundamental question, where does life come from? The origin of life. The next question, where does human life come from? Because human life may come from someplace different than the origin of life. Where is our relationship to our body? What is our relationship to our body? Are we separate and powerless when it comes to our bodies? Or are we somehow deeply linked with our bodies? That's the question. Whoops. What is our relationship to the world around our bodies? Are we separate and powerless when it comes to that world? What is our relationship to the past? Does the past occur in cycles, and can we learn from the cycles of the past? Or is it a one-time deal? Is civilization a one-time deal? And we're up here at the very sophisticated top, having been and come from the very primitive beginnings. That's the question. And how do we solve our problems? The best science of the last 300 years has led us to embrace a story that we now know is no longer true. It's a story of separation. It's a story that looks like this. The false assumptions of science have told us the origin of life is a random event. The origin of human life is a random event. That we are separate and powerless when it comes to our bodies. That we're separate and powerless, disconnected when it comes to our world. That civilization is in fact linear. It began here in a primitive state. It's evolved here to the sophisticated state. And that nature is based upon competition and conflict. Those false assumptions have led us to embrace a story of separation right here. We've been led to feel separate from one another, from our own bodies, from the world around us, and we've been led to believe that we solve our problems through that competition and that conflict. Okay, the consequence of that thinking is the world we have right now. If you want to know where that thinking leads, look at the big problems, whether we're talking about the collapse of global economies based on survival of the strongest, or we're talking about the way we're treating the earth and the resources, or the way we're dealing with climate change or weapons, any of those things. That is the result of us solving problems through the false assumptions of separation. Okay, I told you I was going to do this really fast. Those false assumptions have led us to today's world of extremes. Now, new discoveries, new science-based discoveries. These aren't my opinions. They're not my theories. They're not my hypotheses. They are based on peer-reviewed science, are now telling us life is not random. In longer programs, I could tell you more about why. Human life is not random. The fossil evidence doesn't support it. The DNA evidence doesn't support it. That we are deeply connected and linked to our bodies. You've got a stage full of people this weekend telling you about that and all the different ways it works. You know, we all learn differently, and that's why there's so many really good speakers that come from so many different perspectives. And I'm so honored to be on the stage sharing it with all of them because, yes, we're all different, and we're all working to become better people and create a better world. Thank you. The new sciences tell us we're deeply connected and interdependent with the earth. that civilization is cyclic and it repeats, and advanced technological civilizations have been here as far back as the last ice age. We can learn from them, learn from their mistakes and what they did that worked and what they did that didn't work, so we don't repeat those mistakes. But here's the big one. The best science of our time is now telling us nature's not based in this model of competition and conflict. Nature is based upon what is called mutual aid and cooperation. That is a big, big shift. A big shift. You would think people would be so happy to have these new discoveries, they would share them everywhere. And the reality is that there is a reluctance, and in some cases, a resistance in the mainstream media to share these. It's not being shared in mainstream documentaries, mainstream classrooms, mainstream textbooks. Power, money, ego, habit are all reasons why, but the net result is that we have a generation of young people that are being steeped in the ideas that led to the extremes, and we're asking them to solve the problems through the thinking that led to the problems. It makes no sense whatsoever, but that's changing. And you all are part of the change, and that's why we love you, and we love you supporting these programs, because you'll take these ideas in ways that make sense to you, and you'll communicate them in your words, in your language to your community, and we love you and appreciate you, and thank you so much for that. Thank you. That was very fast, and some of you have never been with me before, and you're saying, what did this guy just say? If you want to know more about that, I'm not going to push the books, but I want you to know it is available in the book. Deep Truth is where all of the science is in the book that tells us where those false assumptions are. The problem is that new problems need new ways of thinking. And this is the beauty of what we're doing. Science now gives us the reasons to think differently. So if you don't like the idea that you're learning something new, blame it on science. You can say, well, science says it. Okay? Science gives us the reasons, but the world gives us the reasons to live differently. Our global family, our brothers and sisters. Now, the keys to live and to think differently in times of transition, they're preserved in our most cherished traditions. My sense in my training as a scientist is if I could find places that were least disturbed by the modern world, those places would have the information most intact. You've seen some of the places that I've been to. I want to zero in on a couple of these right now. It was in the highlands of central China on the Tibetan Plateau where I began to find places like this. And the only way to get there is transportation like this. But it was worth it so I could meet people like this. These are the people that implement the kind of resilience I'm talking about. They implement it in their lives, and I wanted to see how they live these ideas, how they live these principles so we can learn from them. So I want to share something with you. Look at these beautiful ladies. You hear about monks all the time. I want you to see some of the women. Look at these beautiful ladies here. You see one that looks really interesting? Yeah, like maybe this one right here. How old do you think this woman is? Just take a guess. Okay, this is where I get to be an auctioneer. I heard 90, 90, 90, 95, 95, 95, 95, 100, 100, 100, 105, 105 going once, 105 going twice, 105, 110, 110, right there, 110, 120, 120. Just fun, just fun. That's from my frustrated rock singer days. So I don't get to speak and sing fast anymore. Okay, I heard a whole range of numbers here. When I was here, I wanted to know how old this woman is. We went to the Mother Superior in the nunnery where she is. She looks good. Her skin color is good. Her eyes are good. She still has hair. She shaves it for convenience. When I was with this woman in 2005, they showed us her documents. And in 2005, this woman, her date of birth in 2005 was 1885. So in 2005, she's 120 years old. I said, and she's not the only one, and it's not like she's, one. It's very common when you move outside the borders of Western culture for people to live over 100 years. And I want to tell you, the cancers that we're so accustomed to seeing, the heart disease that we're accustomed to seeing doesn't exist in these cultures. So it tells you it's not about age. It's not age. Don't let the age thing. I just turned 200. My wife told me I don't look a day over like 165. So thank you. So I wanted to know, what is her secret. Her secret, she said, is what they teach and learn in the monasteries. It's all about compassion. It's a feeling. It's a feeling. If she was the only one, this would be an anomaly. She's not. This is a brief program. I'm just going to do one more. How old do you think this woman is? Oh, you're afraid to tell me now, right? This woman, what'd you say? Oh, now you're getting really brave. This woman made history when she went shopping one day. She lives in the Palestinian territories. She hadn't been shopping for a while. She went out and she had to go through a checkpoint that didn't exist in the past. At the checkpoint, they said, "We need to see your papers." She said, "Okay." They said, "Your papers are expired." She said, "Okay." They said, "Go to the police station and get your new papers." That's when she made headlines. Now, if you can read Hebrew, you can see her new passport right here. This woman was born in 1888. Okay, she was 120 in the year 2008 when this story broke. I wanted to know, what is her secret? How do you live and look that good? I mean, actually, she looks good for 120, don't you? What's the secret? She said the first thing she does is every morning when she wakes up, she does an exercise that looks just like this. So I'm going to demonstrate the exercise. It looks like this. That's the whole exercise. So I looked in a yoga book, and what I found is when your arms go up, your heart rate rises, and when your arms go down, your heart rate falls. I said, "Was that it?" And they said, "Well, it's the feeling that she has for her family, for her children, her grandchildren, her great-great-grandchildren, and her great-great-great-great-grandchildren." Okay, I said, is that it? Is that the whole thing? They said, "Well, there's one more thing. We're not sure how much of a role this plays in her longevity, but I'm just going to share it with you and you." They said every morning when she wakes up, she drinks a cup of olive oil. Now, I'm not sure if it's like a measuring cup or a little teacup, but in my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, a cup of olive oil, that's got to like change something in your, it's got to like move something in your body. It's just what I'm thinking. I don't know. So you can take it for what it's worth. So what is the common theme? I'm doing this quickly. I know I am, because I've got somewhere I want to be when we close here today. What is the common theme, the common link between these ladies? What is it? It's a heart-based experience. A heart-based experience. It's not what they're thinking so much, it's what they're feeling. It's the heart-based experience of love. So now I'm going to ask you another question. What is the greatest killer of adults in the Western world right now? Why do people die between 70 and 100 years of age? Some studies say it's because of medicine itself. And there are studies showing it's the misuse, misapplication of medicine is the number one killer. Beyond that, the killer is what we call heart disease. And the first time I saw that, I said, what in the world? Now think about it. What does that mean? Heart disease. What does that mean? It's like a catch-all term when you don't know what else to say. It covers a lot of ground. So I did a little research. James Blumenthal from Duke University. I have a lot of respect for this man. He's done some amazing research. He's on the leading edge in mainstream. So the mainstream is beginning to think along these lines. Let's look at what he said. James Blumenthal, what he said is, heart disease, number one, it's defined as the physical symptoms. So you've got high blood pressure, vascular plaque, stroke. We know about all that. But he took it one step further. He said these things result from non-physical experiences based in emotion. Long-term fear, frustration, anxiety, and disappointment. Now that's a big step for the medical community right there. But he even took it one step further. All of these fall under the umbrella of one word. One word, and that word is hurt. But it's not just any kind of hurt. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's unhealthy to feel hurt. That's not the case at all. It's a very special kind of hurt, unresolved hurt. When you have the hurt and you do nothing about it, and you stuff it away, and it eats at you day after day, and it nags at you. Oh no, I'm losing one. Oh no, you're going to miss the good stuff. I mean, this is like the best part. Oh no. I'm sorry. This might be important for you to leave, so thank you for being here. Take care. Okay, I'll tell you what happened. See, when I'm here with you in this way, my heart is so open with you, and it lights up all of my issues, my abandonment issues. And people start leaving. I got a whole story about, parents divorced, abandonment issues, and all that stuff. So when one leaves, that's okay, we'll carry on. Unresolved hurt. I'm walking back and forth because if I don't, there's a big wall between you all and me. So that's why I'm doing this. Also, I have to see the screen. Unresolved hurt. So please, we all feel hurt. And there's nothing wrong with feeling a hurt. It's when we do nothing about the hurt. That is what leads to the problems. Now, heart disease. When we look at heart disease, 70 to 100 years is the average length of life in the human in the West. Why? This is the reason why. 70 to 100 years appears to be the length of time that our hearts can hold up to the stress of unresolved hurt before they simply give out. Those ladies, now I chose those two women specifically. Think about this. If you're a woman and you're 120 years old and you've lived in Tibet for 120 years, you've got some things to feel stress about. Would you agree? Or a Palestinian woman living in the territories for 120 years, their world has changed so much. How many are familiar with the ancient Essenes? Essenes. Okay, thank you for your honesty. Some have never heard of them. The Essenes are a mysterious sect. 500 years before the time of Jesus, they appeared in Egypt and the Middle East. And they were not called the Essenes. The Egyptians recorded their appearance, and they called them therapeutae because these people knew how to heal. Therapeutae. The Essenes tell us in their writings, they say that we live in bodies that can heal themselves. Imagine that. They say we live in bodies that can heal themselves. I'm just going to tell you right now, in the last 5 years, peer-reviewed medical science has now documented that every organ in your body, in fact, has the ability, the tissue, the cells have the ability to heal themselves. Even organs and tissue we were told could not. Spinal cord tissue, heart tissue, brain tissue, pancreatic tissue. They could all heal. So knowing that, what the Essenes said next makes a lot of sense to me. They said, we live in bodies that can live on this earth multiple centuries, multi-century bodies. They said, we live in bodies, we should be here at least 900 years, is what the Essenes say, and there are records of people, if you believe the records, that lived at least that long. Noah was 600 years old. He built the boat that saved the world, the ark, and then he parked the boat and made babies for another 300 years, so we know he was in good shape. How many of you would want to live 900 years in this world? Think how much you could get done in 900 years. No, how many would want to live 900 years if you could live healthy, happy, productive lives? See, that's the key. Because when we say that, people say, I don't want to live that long because I want to be healthy. Well, you can be. And people have been in the past. You've just seen two women who've learned to transcend the first 120 years of their lives. I love this. When I think about 900 years, Think how much you could get done. You know, a project today we think of in terms of a year or 5 years. It gives a whole new meaning to long-term projects. But think about this. What would it mean to look another human in the eye and say, sweetie, I love you. Will you spend the rest of your life with me? 900 years. Some of you look absolutely terrified right now. I just want you to know. And some of you look really excited. Okay, it's good to laugh because laughter opens our hearts, and it's good to do that because of what I'm going to say next. They said that we are in bodies that could live here at least 900 years, but they said the first 100 years are the hardest. The first 100 years are the most difficult, and here is the reason why. In the first 100 years of every human life, we will lose everything that we have ever loved. The people that we've grown to love will disappear from our lives. The pets that love us unconditionally will disappear from our lives. For many of you, it's happening right now. A way of life that we have grown accustomed to will disappear, and if we cannot resolve the hurt from that loss, it steals from us the very thing that we cherish the most, and that's life itself. Those ladies learned to do it, and they did it not through thinking or making things happen. They did it through a feeling in their hearts, and that's what I want to say. It's important to us because you and I are hurting right now from the loss of our world as we go through our time of extremes. A new normal is emerging. The old world is disappearing, and we've never been given the opportunity to mourn it and resolve it and let it go. So many people are struggling and clinging to an idea of a world that can no longer exist, waiting for it to come back. Those are the ones that are having the problems. Resilience is a key to resolving life's hurt. I want to share with you a statement. Judith Rodin, an amazing woman, she's now the current president for the philanthropic Rockefeller Foundation. And the reason I'm using this is because that is a very high-level organization that has a lot of money, that has hired a lot of scientists from many disciplines all over the world to study resilience. And the result of that study, they are recognizing the significance of where we are right now, and that's why I'm sharing this statement with you right now. They're saying what distinguishes today's threats from those of the past are the escalating rate at which they're occurring and the growing interconnectedness of our planet. Building resilience is no longer a luxury. It's not something we might do in our spare time. Building resilience is a 21st century imperative. So when you have high-level organizations that are now saying precisely the same thing that our indigenous ancestors said, the resilience is what helps us to meet the crises, the challenges, the changes in the time of extremes. How do we do it? That's my question. How do we do it? Resilience, it's the key to personal transformation. It's the key to changing our lives. Science tells us why resilience is so important. And I love this picture. This is a Tibetan monk in a university hospital. And these are electrodes on his brain because they want to find out how he's able to master the physiology of his body. And he, after they did this, they took the picture, he was giggling. He said, "Why are you wiring my brain? That's not where the change is happening. Why are you wiring my brain?" But this is how they're learning. This is how the science is learning. Okay, this is where I want to go with this. I know that you know, with every heartbeat, if you ever had an EKG, an electrocardiogram, you hear the bump, 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 bump. Every bump, bump, the peak right here, we often think that the time between one bump, bump and the next bump, bump is the same, but it's not. It varies from beat to beat. Here's what I mean. These are measured in milliseconds. You can see here is 845 milliseconds, 745, 812, 732. The beats look similar, but the time between each one is different. That difference is important. It's called heart rate variability, HRV. Here's why it's important. When we are really young, our heart rate variability is tremendous. The distance between the beats, rarely is it ever the same. It's different every beat. Okay? As we grow older and we become more locked into our ways of thinking, become more rigid in the way we look at the world and our expectations of the world, that distance becomes more regular, and this is why it's important. The more the variability, the greater the resilience. The more the variability, the greater the resilience. So when we're young, we're exploring a new world as children. We're finding out that the dog in our neighbor's living room may not be as friendly as the dog in our living room. We're finding out what a hot burner on a kitchen stove means. We need a lot of heart rate variability, a lot of resilience to help us with that. As we get older and we become more rigid in our thinking, we begin to lose that resilience. HRV, heart rate variability, is the key to resilience. Now, here's how this works. Every moment of every day, there's a conversation between your heart and your brain. The heart's sending signals to the brain, brain's responding back to the heart. The quality of that signal, the quality of the signal from your heart to your brain tells your brain what chemistry to release into your body. Anti-aging hormones, high immune response chemistry, or stress chemistry. So when you are feeling feelings of frustration, unresolved hurt, anger, you're sending this irregular, jagged signal from your heart to your brain, and your brain responds by sending that kind of chemistry into the body. These are people with weak immune systems. They age before their time. People that have the ability, to send signals that you would call positive emotions. Love, compassion, appreciation, gratitude, care. Look how the signal changes. A very even, regular signal that goes to the brain. We can learn to do this very, very quickly. Now, in longer programs, I'd share the science. When I go in with our indigenous friends, with the monks and the nuns in the monasteries, or the indigenous people in the ceremonies, all of their work is heart-based work because they have found ways to regulate the signal. They found ways to regulate that signal, positive emotions. So optimum conversation between the heart and the brain is called coherence, and the optimum coherence creates greater resilience. So the more coherence we can have, the more resilient we are in life. There's an organization in Northern California. It's called the Institute of Heart Math. How many are here familiar with heart math? Most of the room, it looks like. They are pioneers in researching this kind of material, and I'm not their employee, but I've worked with them for years. And much of what I'm referencing here, if you'd like to know more about that, go to the Institute of Heart Math, HEART, capital MATH, .org. Go to their website. So, optimum coherence, it's a low-frequency signal. The bottom line is that coherence creates resilience. And that's what I want to say to you today. The more coherence we can create, the better our resilience. Now, that's what's taught in the monasteries, that's what's taught in the nunneries, that's what these people are learning to do, that's what these people are learning to do. That's the beginning of where I want us to go from this point forward, to have that kind of coherence. Now, if you just bear with me just a minute, I have to have guys in the back, I'm going to need that video in just a couple of minutes, please. Thank you. One of the most difficult things for people in the West to do is the first step in the coherence. And the first step is to move from our mind into our hearts. How do we move into our hearts? Many people, we've gone to these classes and workshops. If I invite people to move from your mind to your heart, many people are so accustomed to being in your mind, you will think in your mind what it's like if you're in your heart, but you're still in your mind doing it. So what I'd like to do today is to share an experience of that first step. When I've been with the monks and the nuns in monasteries in Bolivia, in Peru, and the shaman in the Andes, and in Tibet and Egypt, as different as they are from one another, the way they teach this is to have a common experience, a shared experience that touches everyone's heart. But it means something different to everybody in the room. Every one of us feels differently, but we're sharing a common experience. So I'm going to invite you, just take a moment. We're all feeling a feeling right now. It touched every one of us differently. But whatever you're feeling for you, that's you in your heart. So I'm going to invite you to give your feeling a name. Give it a name. Let's close your eyes. Take a deep breath with me. I invite you. Give that feeling a name. And this is a feeling that empowers you to be with this experience when you choose, rather than waiting for the world to give it to you. It empowers you to call this feeling into your heart. And it's from the intelligence of your heart, not your thinking mind, that you make the choices and the decisions. That you look forward to embrace the world that's emerging and allow yourself to thrive in the new possibilities and the new opportunities, because your heart looks beyond the distinctions that have separated us in the past. It looks beyond the judgments that have kept you locked into an old way of thinking. It looks beyond all the voices and all the reasons that you've ever heard of why you should or should not do what your heart desires. The wisdom of your heart. And new discoveries now have shown that our heart actually has its own neural network, its own brain tissue. Neurons in the heart, they carry a memory. They carry an intelligence, they carry a wisdom, and we access it through emotion. So take one more deep breath. Just allow that feeling to be in the room. Now, the last piece of this story, the man's name was Emmanuel. Bruce Lipton and I were on tour in Australia early this year, January, and there was a man in the audience who was a classmate of Emmanuel who didn't know that we were going to show that film. He was obviously surprised to see it. So when we go back, he has offered to arrange a meal between us and Emmanuel. So next time I meet with you, I'll have that update. But also Emmanuel said he never imagined that film would be shown again and again to open people's hearts, and he's very honored that that is happening. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you supporting this program. It's so important now, more than ever, that we come together in community like this, community of our hearts, community of our minds. There's a new world that's emerging. The problems are already solved. We have to make room for it in our lives. We have to make this new world a priority. And the first step for all of us is to be able to accept the change. More change, faster than any generation has ever been asked to accept. Resilience is the first step in doing that. It's your key to the transformation. That's what I wanted to say to you today. I love you all. Thank you all so very much for being with us.